I said we will have a real cool time tonight. I said we will have a real cool time tonight.
All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41, and this is my weekly Monday night show on Adobe Radio. This is Season 4, Episode 3, and it's a good one tonight. I have an old friend on the show, and a real cool dude, the real deal. I have the real deal on my show this week. I have Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and now the Defiant. Some people will also know him as the one-time announcer of 20 years on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. Dicky Barrett is on the show, my old friend. I love Dicky. I'm not going to do a big lead into this one because this is a two-parter. So I did an interview with Dicky, I don't know, over 2 years ago when my other show on 94.9 The Rock up in Toronto started. So there's that portion, and that's going to be the first portion of what I'm going to show you. Then there's the second interview I just did with Dicky, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And this is obviously 2 years later, and a lot has changed for Dicky. The Bosstones are no longer. He's no longer on Jimmy Kimmel, but he has a brand new band, a kick-ass band called The Defiant. And now I do want to get right into the conversation with Dicky, but I want to give you a quick background of Sum 41 and Dicky Barrett. Now, in 2000, we released our first album called Half Hour of Power. And that was released on Island Def Jam, but it was through the imprint, an imprint called Big Rig, which is owned by Dicky Barrett. And that same year, the Bosstones took us out on tour for about 5 weeks, I believe. It was our second ever U.S. tour. It was us first, then Flogging Molly, then the Mighty Mighty Bosstones across America. We all still in Sum 41 reference that tour as a landmark tour for our band because the Bosstones had been doing it. The Bosstones have been around since 1983. They know how to tour. They have it dialed, but we didn't. I mean, we were 19 and 20 years old. And so we watched the Bosstones, how they do it, how they treat their fans, how they treat their crew, how they treat each other. And that kind of set the mark for us going forward. We owe so much to Dicky and the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and Flogging Molly for that matter, because they were the same. Like, they really showed us how to do it. Dicky would also call Derek out on stage every night because Dicky had black hair, still has black hair. Derek at the time had black hair, and he'd call him out every night and introduce Derek as his son, do a big speech. It's amazing. They just treated us so well for being young kids. So without further ado, let's just get into the conversation. The first part of my conversation with my old dear friend, I love this guy to death, Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and the Defiant, right after this. All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from the band Sum 41. This is my show on Adobe Radio. This week, my guest is my old friend, Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and now his band, The Defiant. Let's just get right into it. Again, this is a conversation I had with Dicky over 2 years ago now, this first part. So you're going to be listening to it, and a lot has changed, like I said before. But later on in the show, I'm going to show you the most recent interview I just did with Dicky, which was only like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So here we go. First part of my interview with my old friend, Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and the Defiant.
I'm texting with Derek. He says to say hi.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's doing good. I mean, he's been sober for almost 7 years now, or 6-7 years. So he's like super driven. I don't know if you ever saw him when he was kind of on the booze.
I crossed paths with him a couple times, and it's difficult, because we've always done that thing for that father-son thing, and then it's like, so if I, Derek, I understand you're drinking too much. I mean, when it's something that deep, it's a good joke right up until But when I say this to you, and at the time, I think maybe I did say, you guys have a huge place in my heart. I always thought the absolute world of Sum 41, all of you guys. And it started out like the label just introducing me to you guys and going, this is a band we're going to sign. And you go, okay, okay. And they're a young punk act. But then, you obviously had the goods. And then when we toured with you, we just, all of us, and that goes for Lawrence, for Joe, for, little Joe, we just fell in love with you guys as people. And so that whole father thing, when people mention you, I get proud like a father. And, so people are like, is he really your son? I go, no, I just really like those dudes. So why do you get, so I get happy and corny about you guys.
No, well, thank you, because I mean, you guys, I was thinking back to those times because we were talking today, and I was like, you guys really, for some odd reason, I don't know why, but you guys really took us under your wing. Like it was incredible what you guys did for us. I mean, you showed us how to tour, and you showed us how to treat people, and we were constantly getting in trouble. That we weren't even legal to drink in the U.S. at the time, yeah. And we were constantly getting in trouble. You guys really just showed us like, this is how you do it. This is how you treat your crew. This is how you treat your fans and the whole thing. So I mean, I don't know where we would have ended up years later had we not toured with you guys, and you guys showed us all that stuff. It's really incredible, and thank you so much for those.
It's sort of the music that you chose, and we got the same thing from other bands, and maybe we were on the, but it was this, and you can think of all the different bands you've toured afterwards, whether it be Rancid or whoever it was, some of the older bands that you toured with. But I mean, that was the spirit and the heart and where we came from. It was sort of that DIY and take care of each other and hunker down. No one's going to do anything for us. And then being able to pass it on and being, to people who deserved it was a pleasure and a privilege. So you go, and it was incremental. So you go, oh, here's this disc from these kids from Canada. And then you go, oh, this looks interesting. And then you listen to it, go, wow, they sound great. They're great. So bring them on the road. There's something for us in that. Bring this young band on the road. But then as you discover you like their personalities and you like them as people, then you want to kind of give them more. I think the fact that the music that you can go, it's punk rock, and you can, try to discredit it. I think that it's not made by stupid people.
Yeah, of course.
I think, so it's not just like, we just want to go out on the road and terrorize. It's like we had things to say and thoughts in our head. So there's that sort of luxury. So you're like, all right. So helping other people and getting in and helping them with whatever they're doing is not a bridge too far. It's not such a lost content.
Yeah, I was reading and I remember this from way back with you. People were asking you at the time, like, why do you like Sum 41? And you said something like, because they remind me of how I was. And I started thinking, I was like, we never really touched on that back then. Like, were you a troublemaker? Like, were you a troublemaker, like kind of like we were back then? Like, was that kind of the thing?
Oh my gosh. Get in your time machine, go back to Boston, 1982, and then ask anybody anywhere if, mischievous, up to no good, shenanigans, but good-hearted and good-spirited, and certainly there was not no cruelty, but we raised up, and think about it too, and I'll forever think of you guys as kids. But when you were kids, like getting together and being together, even in your day, it wasn't, that was important. That's what we did. We didn't do this, Zoom each other. Like you went to somebody's house and hung out with them. You played music with that guy. Yep. It wasn't a lot of this, wasn't any of this. It was, I'm doing that, but this is recorded, so I should say what I'm talking about. There's not a lot of video games, not a lot, human connection, interaction was very important, and what we were all about. So get a time machine and go back to when I was a kid, and my father wouldn't even consider picking me up. I left the house at 8 a.m, and about 7 o'clock at night I would show back up at the house, and he'd ask me, how was your day at school? One time we drove by the school, and my father said, and I pointed it out to him, I go, hey, that's where I go to school. He go, oh, really, kid? That's great. I was wondering where you went. But now it's like, and that's all we did was play with kids, outside interacting, playing with kids. So that was,
Oh yeah, nowadays I have to see my kid going to school before I leave the school grounds. I have to make sure he's inside. But so he's gonna just tear off somewhere down the street.
I can't imagine it being any other way. And the part of me goes, yeah, how did my parents do that? But then part of me goes, it was a different time. And part of me goes, it was better time. But part of me goes, I can't like if my kids are out of my sight for a few seconds, I start to kind of panic, going, okay, where are they? It's definitely a different. You can't imagine. I can't imagine operating the way my dad did.
Oh yeah, just going to do whatever you want, come back with the streetlights are on. It's like that was kind of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's talk Bosstones. You guys, I'm sad because you guys are, I guess, what you call retiring.
We had a good run, dude. Don't be sad. We got to meet Sum 41. We got to tour with you guys. I checked a lot of boxes. I've rung a lot of bells. But never say never, and who knows what that kind of stuff means.
Right.
Currently, it's not as much fun to tour.
Yeah.
As it once was.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. I don't like doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the way our two bands always did it, and I mean we still do it, is like you gotta kind of, when you put out a record, I feel like you just gotta go. You can't just, it's hard to just do like weekend tours and stuff like that. It's if you're gonna do it, you almost just gotta go do it, right? So if your heart's not in it anymore, it's too hard, then yeah, I think you might as well not.
My heart is in everything that we've done, but I don't want to get to the place where my heart isn't into it. I think that from A to Z, I was very passionate about it and loved every minute of it. And I don't want to. What I signed on for was to get up in front of people and play live. So when things started turning into it's going to be remote, or it's going to stream something or that, then it started to sour for me. I had very little interest in that. Once the model started changing and the game plan was different, then I don't know. And then restrictions and mandates and those sort of things, that didn't interest me. I didn't want to, felt too, telling people what to do didn't feel like part of our original game plan either. So, but once again, never say never. And I will forever, ever, ever love every single experience I had being a Bosstone, and I love my brothers.
Oh yeah, I mean, you guys are still to this day one of the best live shows I've ever seen. Even from
thank you, dude.
Yeah,
thank you.
Seriously, honestly, like even from when I was 20, when we were touring together, even we played shows in England together, and then Warped Tour. I mean, Warped Tour 2000 is one of the greatest memories. You guys were shooting a guy out of a cannon every day.
Remember that? Remember that guy, Dave the Bullet? Remember when we took it to Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, I was bragging we got a gun over the border.
That's right. Yeah. No, that was amazing. But really, one of my I want to talk about one song in particular, the one I was texting you the other day. It's definitely one of my favorite Bosstones live songs. Is Rascal King, and
that was the Cannon song, right?
That was the Cannon song, yeah. And that was on Let's Face It, and that was what 97 it came out.
I think it's 25 years old this year.
Okay, so 97. Yeah.
Good math, dude. Very proud of you, young Cone.
Do you remember? Do you remember like why you wrote that song? Like where that song came from? Like,
it came from a sort of a political hero of mine, and I'm not sure why he was a political hero, but he kind of and he was from before my day. He was from the 40s and 50s. A guy named James Michael Curley, a legendary Boston politician, mayor of Boston, and I was reading everything there was to read about the guy. There were several books, like, and movies. I think the movie, not The Quiet Man. Gosh, I can't remember what it's called. The Last Hurrah. It's in the lyrics. The Last Hurrah was a movie based on his life. And then a friend of mine's father wrote a book called The Purple Shamrock about Mayor Curley. And then there was another book written called The Rascal King. And I just, I did history and Boston history in particular. I just absolutely love and have always had a unique and strange passion for it. So I wrote it about James Michael Curley and him, and then sort of kind of related it to us and what we were doing, and sort of his charge forward and his, put your head down and just go for it kind of way of living. And then I, made parallels and compared it to what we were doing.
Last around, do it again. The rascal king behind the bars, all the one in front of them. Last around, do it again. The rascal king behind the bars, all the one in front of them.
But yeah, and that from that album, which was, can you believe it's 25 years, dude?
Crazy. I remember being a teenager watching, the impression that I get on Much Music in Canada and stuff like that. I still remember seeing it.
What was the host of Much Music?
Then there was a few. There was like Sukian Lee. There was Master T.
Klaus.
George Strong, who's kind of like the punk guy.
I've got a question. When did the first Sum 41 record come out?
Well, on Big Rig, 2000. How did you guys get?
No, that was my idea.
Oh, okay.
They said, because they wanted. I know, maybe I shouldn't pull the lid off this, but
all good.
The label came to me and it's like, this band, how do we get them? Because you can't. Can they be a punk band and go from, this to a major label? And how do we make the leap? And I said, well, let's put out an EP on Big Rig, buy them a little bit of credibility, and I'll put my arm around them, and that sort of thing. And everyone liked the idea. So, and it was good for the label we were starting at the time.
Yeah.
The Big Rig brand. So it worked out for everybody, and I liked it. And it kind of allowed me to push some of the people at the label away from you.
Yeah. And then
all of a sudden it was like, well, hey, even the guy that signed you, he was like, well, Dicky, you do know I signed them. And I was like, no. And it became like my find all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do.
Diabolical, right?
Yeah. I think Rob Stevenson, right?
Rob Stevenson, right. Very, very nice guy, right?
Yeah. Rob Stevenson's cool. I do remember that whole thing. It was, the whole saying of like, you guys just can't come out of the box with fat lip. It's like, it's just, so we ended up doing half-hour power.
On Major, that was the sort of the problem. And
yeah, for sure. One of my favorite bits is when you used to bring Derek up and like father son thing. But the one night, I don't know if you remember this, I think it was the last night of the tour, we sent Dave up.
Yeah.
And you're like, Don't fuck with the bit. Don't fuck with the bit. You're like, I was like, yeah. It was
show business. You do not. Rule number one in show business: don't fuck with the bit.
I want to get into your influences. Like, so in the '80s, before you started the Bosstones, you were into, like, obviously you started the Bosstones, you like ska and you like that kind of stuff. What kind of made you want to start, like, create the Mighty Mighty Bosstones,
I personally, I was part of the Boston hardcore scene. which when I was in high school, when I was like 17 years old, and there's bands like Gangrene that Joe Gittleman ended up being in, and SSD Control, and they had this scene, that short-lived scene, you know, like Minor Threat was in DC, and the Circle Jerks and the Bad Brains were, but in Boston we had Gangrene, Jerry's Kids, SSD Control, and that was my scene. That was what I was part of. There's about 100 of us in Boston, and there were shows at a place called the Gallery East, and sometimes the Channel, and I was like part of something, you know, as a kid in high school, and it was a thrill to me. And I had these friends. We went into Boston, hung out, and I met members of the Bosstones through that, and other people. So then I discovered bands like the English Beat and Madness and Specials, and like love for them. So chronologically, I was into punk and ska, part of the Boston hardcore scene, and then met people, and then said, okay, I want to form a band that's different than just a 4-piece hardcore band, and have it be bigger and with more going on. And maybe I was trying to cover my own lack of talent, my inability to properly sing, and say, okay, if I get create a complete dog and pony show, or then maybe I can hide behind all of that, but which I couldn't. People discovered me. Oh, that dude sucks. No, don't pay attention to me. Look at this guy's dancing. He's just a dancer. We have horns. Ignore me. So the general principle, and through bands like, and if you talk about influences, probably we all agree, to the man on the Clash. Everybody that ever was a Boston loves the Clash. And then from there, we all agree on the Specials and Madness. And for me, when it comes to ska, Madness was my favorite, and favorite band and biggest influence for sure.
That's it. It's interesting to me that you went from, well, I guess it's kind of like how you went, but like hardcore when you first started, like listening, part of that hardcore scene, it seems so, like, because I wasn't a part of it, it seemed so angry and vicious. But then you went into like dancing and feel good stuff, horns. Like, well, how was that transition?
That's a good question and decent observation, but it was the unity of it. It was at that formative time in people's lives, and high school, you're trying to find who's my group, who are my people, who will I go through life with, and sort of conventionals, the conventional people. I had lots of friends, but it was like I was looking for my people, like, and music seemed to be to draw me in, and this sort of, at that time, fuck society, fuck the government, fuck, Ronald Reagan, all of that sort of stuff was also, I wanted it to mean something, which you can say about the Clash for sure. And you can definitely say that when it comes to ska music at that time, the English stuff, you can definitely say it about the Specials and the English Beat. They were all sort of delivering the same message. And hardcore music, to me, at that time, was saying fuck the norms, fuck convention, and not to bury your podcast in the F word, but that's what attracted me, and the unity, and these are your brothers, and these are your friends, and these are the guys that get you back, and that's what I want the Bosstones to be too, sort of a conglomerate of that, and a microcosm of those things. So, hello, my name's Dicky Barrett, and I'm in the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and you, my friends, are hanging out in Cone's Cave.
Yes, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41, my show right here on Adobe Radio. You're listening to the conversation I had with Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and now his newish band called the Defiant. And that conversation was during the pandemic. That was over 2 years ago, and a lot has changed now. The Bosstones have broken up. He did start his new band called the Defiant. He's no longer on Jimmy Kimmel's show, as you just heard. And now I'm going to show you the most recent interview I did with Dicky, which was about 3 weeks ago. And we go through a whole bunch of stuff that has happened to him over the past couple years. Here we go.
Kind of interested in how it felt to go from like the Bosstones, who had been around, I don't know, I guess 30 plus years, to kind of starting from like ground zero, a brand new band. I don't even know, like, were you touring in a van? Were you in a bus? Like, how did it feel to start a whole new band from ground zero after so long after being in the Bosstones?
It felt insane. It felt absolutely crazy, Cone. I never expected to do anything like that at this advanced stage of my lifetime. But the Bosstones ended abruptly, and we probably went into why and how the last time we spoke. But it had to do with COVID, and it had to do with my stance on it and what I was willing to do and not willing to do. And mostly it had to do with people at the time not really knowing what was going on or what was going down or what was happening. But I didn't want to comply or be part of the, you just have to get a shot. You just have, and that seemed to be the answer in the end all, but I wasn't buying into it. I didn't want to be a part of that for a lot of different reasons that won't bog you down with my pal. But so it happened abruptly, and it was after I lost my job in California working on Jimmy Kimmel Live. I was fired by Disney for not getting the COVID shot. At that point, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reached out to me in my moment of darkness and despair, and what am I going to do now? And when that happened, we started working on some music together. He encouraged me to create this song for him at that time. I did, and then it was just too much. All of it was too much for the Bosstones or some of the members of the bands to greater and lesser degree. The band imploded. The band, it was like, what is Dicky doing? What's he all about? What's going on here? I don't understand this. We're out. So that's sort of what went down. And then after a while, to me, but after thinking about it, it was like, I knew at some point the Bosstones would end. It couldn't go on forever, and we wouldn't be able to do it. But I never imagined it wouldn't be on my terms, or it wouldn't be, people would say you're out or you're done. And I didn't like that feeling. And maybe I was out, maybe I was done, but I didn't, I just wanted to find out if that was true. So I said no. And I, got in touch with some guys, like-minded guys that had been for years saying, maybe someday we should, make music together or try writing together or get together or do something. We liked being around each other. And that's Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs, Greg Camp. He was premier songwriter for Smash Mouth. It was Pete Parada, drummer for The Offspring, and Joey LaRocca, who played with the Briggs. And we said, let's give this a shot. And if it didn't work out, or it sucked, or we came up with nothing, then we wouldn't be talking right now, and you wouldn't have heard anything. But in no time at all, we started sounding good and making music that we enjoyed and that we thought sounded good. And so we made an album. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it did. There is a lot there, actually. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I will say, okay, so I kind of want to touch on the Bosstones thing a little bit. So obviously with the Bosstones situation, they were on board to be like, we're going to get the shot. We want to get the shot so we can go on tour. And you were the one kind of saying, I'm not getting the shot, and I'm not going to do these remote shows where you have to tell people what to do. Was that kind of the vibe? It was like the other guys were kind of like on one side and you were like on another side?
It wasn't so spoken like that, Cone. But no. I mean, yes and no. It wasn't like we're going to do this. It became obvious what I was going to do when I lost the television job, when that happened. And it became obvious that I wasn't really going to comply, or I wasn't going to tell fans that the only way to see the Bosstones was, get vaccinated with a COVID shot. And I had told the band early on that I saw this was coming, that we were heading this way, and there would be mandates, and it would be, you couldn't go into this restaurant, or we wouldn't be able to play live, or we wouldn't be able to fly or be in Europe. And when I first presented that to him, it was like, oh, just calm down. Is Dicky flying off the handle? And I said, well, I foresee that coming, and I'm not going to. And it had to do with, protecting my children, and it had to do with I didn't think that it would be tested, or I think they would come up with something that was more in the line of making money than in actually solving the problem. So, and that felt dangerous to me. And one size fits all when it comes to those sort of things. It never works. So you go, okay, everybody eat this peanut butter sandwich. Well, this guy's allergic to peanut butter, and this guy's, allergic to the gluten in the bread. So it's not, we all can't do the same thing. And that's where, your doctor comes in, and your doctor says, can you do this? So it was unspoken. To answer that question, it was unspoken. But, how other guys in the band felt about it was different than how I felt about it. And it wasn't across the board.
Yeah.
There was some guys going, what are we doing? What's happening? It's a 9-piece band. Keep that in mind too. So, so I'm not speaking for all of them. And, but, and they were crazy times. You remember that. It was, everyone was confused, and everyone was, what's happening. And so we were being asked to do things that made no sense.
Yeah, it's interesting how COVID, that whole time, kind of put a divide in so many people, changed so many people's lives when it kind of didn't need to. I mean, your whole Jimmy Kimmel thing is just kind of crazy to me too, how you were on that show for so long, and then
20 years ago,
it was over.
That was, once again, that was Disney. I don't ever feel comfortable about putting that completely on Jimmy, although our points of view on it were different. But, Jimmy actually tried to keep me around as long as possible, but it just, once Disney said everybody, has to get this shot, then that's when, he could hide me no longer. And I wasn't all that interested in being hidden, or I wasn't, I wasn't going to pretend either. I wasn't going to pretend I got the shot. So
how was it going back? And actually, like, I saw that you played the show. Like, that must have been crazy.
It was so crazy, but it was great. We, he asked us, we showed up, we played, and once again, I worked with those people for 20 years, and there was tons of guys like that worked there, and a lot of the crew. So you guys that are running cables and using the cameras and all the, union guys and stuff were super excited to see me. Very, very happy.
What I kind of also want to talk to you about, because you sent me some stuff on RFK Jr. Where does Bob, where does he steer more? It's like, if he was to drop out of the race, who would he support? Do you think? Like, I honestly don't know.
God forbid, and maybe even by the time, because we're getting close to it, it's like 3 months away.
Yeah.
And maybe by the time you actually air this, maybe he has, but God forbid. And I don't want that to happen. But he was a lifelong Democrat like myself. He comes from Democratic royalty. And I won't give you a huge American history lesson, but that's, the Kennedys were Democrats. And back when being a Democrat meant something. And it's all, this is upside down world, so things don't make sense. But as of right now, first of all, they wouldn't recognize him. They wouldn't even consider him to be their candidate. They would, so it was Joe Biden, and then up until it became too late, and then all of a sudden now it's Kamala Harris, and she's going to be the presidential candidate, Democratic presidential candidate, but she wasn't voted for. She wasn't, wasn't the party's decision. It was the party elite. The people at the top said, well, this is going to be our candidate because Joe Biden can't handle it. Something that the other side had been saying for years. Joe Biden can't handle this, but so they agree. So who would he support? It's difficult to say. I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't like the thought of it.
Yeah, totally.
Let's pretend that's not going to happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I just I have heard people say, well, he'll probably drop out at some point and support this or that. And like I said, I don't really keep up, so I don't even know who he would lean towards.
If he drops out, do me a favor, Coach. Text your old buddy and make sure I'm okay.
Yeah, definitely. I know. I will. 100%. All right. Well, here's the other thing.
It'll be like he lost a family member.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, come February 2025, our band is ending. You better call me and ask me how I'm doing.
I've been checking in on you all the time on that, and I still feel the same way. There's so much left, especially with these tours. I've been following it. Cone, people are crazy about your band. What are you doing? And you're still kids.
I know. Well,
as far as I'm concerned, is that where it is? That guy, so he's got the book out now.
Yeah.
Okay, he's got that out of his system. I think he's feeling it too. I can tell the way, if I text him or his posts, he's getting real nostalgic and real, gooey and sappy. And it's not like you're not at all long in the tooth. It's not played out. You go on stage, you deliver a great show. I saw you guys play Phoenix. You're great. You're great. Everybody in the band is, firing on all cylinders. So what's he gonna do? Sit around and do a solo career, or?
I don't know.
And what are you gonna do? Interviewing every 4 years?
I don't know. I think he needs some time away, because I think about this, and like, as the primary songwriter, the front man, the singer, been doing this band since he was 16 years old. I just think maybe he needs that time away, and possibly in a couple of years, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, maybe he'll be like, I really miss this. Maybe we should do this again.
But my feeling is he'll miss it. He'll miss it soon.
Yeah.
And I think he's missing it while he's doing it right now. Now, you guys got enough money to cut down the work schedule. You got enough money to, I want to be with my kids, and, I'm missing time with them. Take a little time off. It's what you do, and it's what you guys do together. And that's a rare thing. You can make music and people will kind of care about it, and it'll be great. But it will never be Sum 41 that you guys built when you were 16, and everything you're doing points to it. Like the videos you made and this album, the last album you made was great.
Oh,
Cone.
Thank you very much.
And I like to tell you suck. You know me.
Yeah. Well, here's
I'm the kind of guy that just gives out compliments.
Here's a question for you then.
So,
since it's all opened up and
yes,
everyone can tour again, do you foresee the Bosstones getting back together?
I never say never, but I'm enjoying the Defiant, because I feel like the building of this and it seems so unsurmountable, and I'm doing it. People care about it, and it was a great record with great songs, and Spin Magazine called one of the songs Song of the Year, and Jimmy Kimmel said you can play the TV show, and on top of when because of our stance and our points of view and, our, general opinions and how we think. There are people that come to the shows and, look at me and say, we're so glad you're doing this. We're so glad, you're saying what you're saying. And, I felt like I had no one, and that's pretty important to me. And I enjoy that. That's sort of what I always, I'm a horrible singer. My son is 1,000 times better singer than I am, but I always felt that I could deliver a good punk song and had things to say. And I felt like I could write a good punk song as well, and punk ska or whatever you want to call it. So that's what I do. And these are the things I have to say now. And this is the message I want to deliver. And it means something to a lot of people. It angers other people, but what are you going to do?
And so
that's the way punk's always been.
Yeah, totally. And some of the themes on this album, like, is it pretty pandemic based? Like, where did Lady Liberty go? Dead Language? Where were you? Like, is a lot of it about this kind of whole thing?
I think it's a broader brush, but than just that. I don't think it was, fine points. I think that it was definitely about what we went through, what we all went through. And it's, I write of the times, and I don't, so yes, the answer would be yes, kind of, but no.
I was texting you a couple months ago because I ran into Rob Stevenson, our both of our old A&Rs. So I want to talk about So the tour that we were on. You were on Pay Attention. You had come off Let's Face It. Rob Stevenson was your A&R guy now.
Yeah.
You released So Sad to Say. And I could kind of sense, and this is when I was 19 years old, I kind of sensed that you didn't really love what the label was doing for that record, or how the record was doing. Do you remember those days? How was that coming off of Let's Face It into Pay Attention?
You're a very perceptive young man, and it was crazy. It was a lot of things were going on. If you remember, Nate left the band at that time too.
Yep.
Just before, so the original guitar player, the guy we made Let's Face It, the guy that was 14 years old when he started playing in the band. Let's face it, and you've gone through the same thing, and Derek certainly has gone through the same thing. It's, when you hit like that, you're in the eye of a complete storm. There's so much coming at you, and someone's sitting there going, okay, and then you're going to be on Saturday Night Live, and then we're going to rush you over, and you're going to do tape David Letterman, and then you're going to go back onto the Warped Tour, and then you're going to get back, so much is happening, and then you're going to go to the MTV Beach House, and from there you're going to go, and I was like, oh, fuck. I just wanted to be in a punk band.
Yeah.
And so all of that, is flying at you, and you're trying to absorb it, and you're trying to enjoy it, and then, the label starts telling you, so finally punk ska, what I've been doing since we started the band and what I really first fell in love with, all of a sudden wasn't the trendy pair of shoes it was, 3 months ago when they're running you around everywhere. It's like, well, do you think you can make some songs without horns in them? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't, want to change course. But they're coming at you. Now, Rob Stevenson is not one of those guys.
Yeah.
He was a very, very different and super interested too in Sum 41, and any help he could get to, help sign you guys. He was like, I love this band, and he started presenting it to me, you guys, and showing me videotapes of you guys being knuckleheads, and then the song sounded so great to me, and there was heavy metal going on, and so we knife and forked it, me and Rob. And so I was like, yeah, you know, if they at all think I'm cool, I'll definitely talk to them. But so I didn't hate what was going on with that record. I loved Pay Attention, but it was a fight with people that were constantly trying to, you know, be a record label and predict what's going to happen musically. And if you remember, and of course you do, we were on Mercury. Mercury turned into Island Def Jam.
Yeah.
You know, so let's face it. So we were absorbed, and as far as Mercury bands go, like everybody was shit canned. We got to stay because we had just made the Let's Face It album, so we were like one of the only bands that were made it through the axe that was swung pretty viciously when you know Seagram's bought Mercury and everything else, and decided to call, you know, we got morphed into Island Def Jam. And all of a sudden it went from, you know, Danny Goldberg to Leo, was his name Leo Cohen?
Leo Cohen, yep.
And that guy, we could do a whole 2 hours on that dude.
So, you know, the other thing, you know, that you're saying about the label kind of asking you to not put horns and stuff, it's funny too, because I always think it's like the label, but also like radio just all of a sudden decides we're not playing this anymore. MTV's like, we're not playing this anymore. We're playing this now. It happened with us. It's like, all of a sudden one record was like, well, they don't play pop punk anymore. So you guys aren't going to get played on the radio.
Yeah.
Isn't
crazy, right?
It's nuts.
And it got to a point where you really kind of started to like it. Like I didn't mind seeing that impression that I get video all over MTV. And to be honest with you, we came in the same way. It was like all of a sudden you are, you know, when people just said, you know, Kurt Cobain killed himself, and people said, we don't want to feel down like this anymore. With, you know, this sort of, you know, so enter the Bosstones wearing suits and No Doubt and, you know, Rancid and Green Day, and, you know, everybody started feeling up and feeling good again. Comes this fun sort of, you know, it was the furthest thing from grunge. And so you kind of live and die by the same thing, enter us. And, you know, when grunge first became popular, that wasn't really good news to, you know, Whitesnake or Warrant or, you know, any of those hair bands. And that's the way trends work. And that's the way things go. So, you know, we had built a following, we had a following when it wasn't so cool to be in Real Big Fish, the Bosstones or Less Than Jake. We still had the fan base and we could still make records and still play shows. So that was good. Are these some of the biggest shows that you've been doing in a long time?
Yeah, I would say these are probably the biggest. This is probably the biggest international tour we've ever done in our whole career. Yeah. But I will say, you know, in saying that, I mean, some of it probably has to do with the fact that it is the last one.
Yeah, but you went out there and you delivered. So now you deliver to people going, oh shit, I didn't know Sum 41 were going to be that good.
Yeah.
I went because I remember them as a kid, and it's going to be their last tour.
Yeah.
But, you know, no one's going to go, oh, you lied to us. You said it was the last tour.
Yeah. Oh,
they won't hold you to it, all right?
You know what you were saying before about you had a following, so it didn't really, you know, when you had a hit and then you didn't have a hit again. That's a big thing nowadays, I think, with young bands to really drive that home. I feel like a lot of young bands don't grind it. I mean, some do. I'm not going to say all young bands. Some young bands grind, but I've seen young bands that they kind of wait and they kind of sit around. They don't go out on the road for 300 shows. I think it's important to kind of get back to that for bands. Like, build your following in the underground. If you have a hit, that's just the cherry on top. But you always have to have that underground following, you know, just to be able to rely on that when you don't have a hit.
It's that's definitely the horse, and the cart is everything else. I mean, it's not, you know, the main thing is service your fans, service service the people that love you, service the people that got you there, service. When the Bosstones broke, you know, I was like, oh, this is it. We're done. It's over. You know, our fans are going to go run from us. And they didn't. They were like, we believed in you. This is what we wanted we wanted you guys to be successful. We knew you were great, that kind of thing. So, you know, my fears were in vain. And if that's the proper use of the expression.
Well, it's because the mainstream came to you. You didn't go to the mainstream.
Thank you, Cone. Perfectly put. Thank you.
And there it is. My conversation with my old pal, Dicky Barrett, formerly now of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and now of his new band, The Defiant. I'm Cone from Sum 41. This is my show, Cone's Cave, right here on Adobe Radio. I'll be right back. All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. Thanks for tuning in to my show right here on Adobe Radio, Season 4, Episode 3, with my old friend Dicky Barrett of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and his new band, The Defiant. Check out the new Defiant album called If We're Really Being Honest. Great album. I really like it, and I'm so happy Dicky was on the show. I love the dude. So nice to us in Sum 41. All the way back. We've known him now for 24 years. I wish nothing but the best for Dicky. Just a great dude. Classic voice. I mean, that voice, you can't miss it. 1 in a million, this guy. I love the guy, like I said. Happy he's on the show. Go Dicky. We're all rooting for you. Can't say enough good things about Dicky Barrett. All right, I got to run. I'll talk to you next week. Cone's Cave is coming back next Monday. Make sure to tune in. Thanks to Dicky, of course, for coming on the show. Thank you to Adobe Radio for having Cone's Cave on their station. Until next week, I gotta go.